hello. Thanks for coming and thanks for dealing with the delay on everything. First, I kind of want to ask a few questions. Have any of you had a onboarding experience that wasn't that great? Yes. Yeah, got a few hands. All right. Have any of you had an onboarding experience that was pretty darn horrible? Like things just left and right kind of going wrong and yeah. All right. Really quickly, kind of gather up with the neighbor real quick and maybe just tell any stories you have of onboarding experiences and kind of what may or may not have worked well when you all were getting into like any of your more recent jobs. So do that real quick, maybe take a minute and share stories.
Would you like to go first, or?
Have a purpose for this.
Alright, I'm a DevOps.
I don't know that I've ever had any good onboarding.
Inheriting and abandoning.
I don't know if I've ever had a horrible one.
Yeah.
Without guidance.
I feel like it's pretty rare that I go into a place and they're like, so you see that ball?
Not really.
Alright, you had a week. Now you should just go manage all of the interactions with every team. I was support right now. And I had no idea what was going on.
So my job, the hardest onboarding experiences and one of these ones where people try to part of the at the same time. Because both of the previous engineers left at the same time. And like they tried to get documentation together and communities and everything, but anytime the entire engineering department
limited experience.
Because you could have had a red.
Because I'm sort of looking for something at the moment. Because there's been many of those opportunities kind of concerns about it. So, especially, where instead of doing you guys are here for the team and all try to help out the team. Some people do what they're going to get or
I've been to an engineering management meetup before.
Second of two.
I see. If they literally gave you that one,
Because the first one was a discussion.
this was a mistake.
It's like a quarter because managers get quarters.
Yeah.
How you as a manager.
Yeah, my manager just told me
What?
Yeah, my manager just told me.
Oh, I just had my me and the CEO, we actually walked off like 5 hours.
Same company, but I'm moving.
I've been having one of those, like, if I can handle the stress of management experiences. I love Excel. I love Trello. I like pretty much and PowerPoint.
I was still within the same.
Yep. Get me out of that IDP. Let me make a good thing I thought.
All right. Does anyone have any really like terrible experiences they want to share? Any fun, terrible stories? No one?
Alright, I'll share mine.
Okay.
I was there a week, and they were like, alright, you've been here a week. we're gonna put you in solo with the management, or not the team to manage the development and support, all the bugs, and you get to tell them what's wrong with all this software right now. And I'm like, I don't even know the software, I've been here a week.
Nice, nice. Any other good stories? No. I was just telling her in the back that I was a temp employee at one point in my life, and they had sent me to an office where I was supposed to go meet on Monday at like 8 a.m. or something, and so I got there like 7:45, waited. And it was just like an empty lobby area, and there was a front desk, but nobody was there. And there was a phone that just said, dial the extension of the person you need to get to. I think I eventually called HR, nobody answered, so I'm just like, this is really weird. Called up the temp company, said like, hi. Yeah, hang on. So they put me on hold. They called the manager, got me back off hold, said, okay, they're going to meet you in the lobby here in a minute. Like, okay, fine. 10 minutes later, nobody still had met me in the lobby. So I called the temp company back, like, hang on. So they put me on hold, called the manager back, got me off hold, said, oh yeah, the manager's like waiting for you in the lobby now. And I'm like, it's a big empty room. I'm literally the only person here. And finally I found out they'd sent me to the wrong address. There were like two offices kind of down the street from each other, and they sent me to the wrong one. So thankfully I did not get in trouble for being late, even though, it was like half an hour to get to the other building before, anyway. So just kind of terrible onboarding experience. But anyway, I have a point to that activity. My name is Sarah Withee, though. I'm Geeky Girl Sarah on all the internet things. I'm a software engineer at a company called Arcadia, and I'm also one of the abstractions organizers, so it'd be kind of cool if you all wanted to come or submit a talk in the near future. I think our CFP opening probably next week. So anyway, kind of a brief outline of how this talk's going to work. I'm going to do a quick little intro. We're going to talk about how to choose good team members for your team. So I think if you need to build up a team to, last for a while, you really want to start at the beginning when you're choosing a particular person. We're going to talk about onboarding experiences and kind of how to make that work better. We're going to have effective mentoring, because even if you know what you're doing and you've been in the industry for a while, you still kind of need to be brought, kind of guided through, your first couple weeks or whatever. We're going to iterate and improve over the process, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up. So, who is this talk designed for? I really kind of think it's designed for a little bit of everybody. You may think you're kind of not a hiring manager, or you're not in HR or whatever, but I think I'll hopefully show in the course of this that, if you're a developer or designer, kind of any sort of role in the tech industry, if you're a manager or a scrum master kind of thing, whether you have a little experience or a lot, I think this will help you too, and kind of just anybody in the team that you work on. And my disclaimer is that I'm a software engineer, so a lot of the stories are based around software engineering things, but really this can kind of apply to whatever sort of industry you work in. Okay. So let's start it off. Kind of like I said, you might wonder why you need to worry about this if you're not a manager or you're in an HR. Perhaps you're just kind of a lowly grunt on the totem pole at this point. But this talk really started off as a really big rant. So many of my friends were just telling me terrible stories about their jobs. They got a new job and it just was going really, really horribly. And then I ended up having a couple of my own terrible job experiences, and it just kind of made me mad. And I'm like, why are these teams so terrible? Why are we not doing anything to make this whole process better for everybody? And then started to think, what can we actually do about it? So that's sort of how this talk came out. I started giving it a couple years ago. It's evolved over the last couple years, so it's hopefully a lot better by now. And then I recently went through an 8-month job hunt, so I have a lot of good stories from that will hopefully help us out too. So moving on to our next section, choosing good team members. I think our process of building a good team really starts before we built it. There's a lot of things we need to think through as we're trying to hire a new person or fill that gap. So one of the first things is really asking your team what they feel is missing. And let's say if you're a you had a C# project and the one person doing C#, left, then obviously that's like a hole. But also, perhaps it's something else. What tech expertise might you need? What skill sets do you feel would be helpful? So if they were working on a particular framework, or, if everybody kind of does the same thing, you don't need to focus on that. But if they had some sort of really good architecture knowledge, perhaps that might be something you should look for in a new person. But maybe they were just really good at coming up with new ideas, and, you need to find somebody else that's good at that too. So any of these skill sets that your team is sort of lacking, these might be things you'd want to consider when you start to go hire somebody. Advertise the role correctly. So I really want to emphasize correctly, because that's their first entry into your company, into your team. If you don't get that right, they're kind of set up to either just be in a totally different experience or just kind of fail, possibly. This is a job description from an actual role I had applied for. I had posted on Twitter that I was looking for a job, and then somebody sent somebody a tweet and said, like, hey, Sarah, you should apply for this. So I went to link to look at it, and I want to read you, this is for a developer advocate, so kind of developing but also working with the community. They required a bachelor's in computer science, a master's in management, 4 years of experience in being a developer advocate, 3 months of training required in software marketing and applications, a deep technical background with at least 5 years of software development experience before the 4 years of experience as a developer advocate, outstanding public speaking abilities, deep understanding of technology and marketing, and a proven record of getting accepted to very major software developer conferences. Yes?
I think at least one of those conferences didn't exist before 5 years ago.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah.
I forgot the list that was on there, but really this turned out to be like so over the top. I'm like, I don't even meet like a quarter of those things, let alone, the whole list. And, they were sort of insistent, like, apply anyway, apply anyway, apply anyway. Like, okay, fine. So I applied. I went through, I think, 3 different interviews before they finally told me no. But they told me no because once they got to talking, they thought I would be a good fit for a developer advocate role, but that's not really what they wanted. They felt like they needed more of a community support person and less of a developer. So they didn't really think their job description out very well. But also, besides it not turning out what they needed, it was kind of a lot of what the last person could do, but not necessarily what you needed to have for the role. Besides wasting, a couple weeks of my time, and it wasted their time, really would have helped to think this out before they had posted it. And then I had looked like a couple weeks later, and the position was still on the website after they were done with this. So it's just kind of absolutely preposterous. So really, you should be accurate and be descriptive of what you're actually looking for. And this is an article from the Wall Street Journal in 2012. And in 2012, they said in the last 6 years, so 6 years a while ago, jobs with the word Jedi, or job descriptions, had increased 67%. Jobs with rock stars had increased 810%. And jobs with ninja had increased 2,505%. And that's not counting mashups like Badass Rockstar Code Ninja. So my first thought was, are people not turned off by these terms? I think most people don't think they're amazing, top level, whatever at their job. They're probably like fairly average because, statistics works kind of that way. But more importantly, do these words really describe what the job does? What exactly does a code ninja do? So I really think describing what your job actually is in the job description, or what you're looking for anyway, really is important, because these don't really describe what you'll be doing. I did see a movie about Jedis once, so that kind of helped, but the rest of them don't really make sense. Have a standard and fair rubric for comparing candidates. I've heard a lot of stories of that guy, he just has it. We know we can hire him, you know. But what does that mean? What does somebody that has it really mean? And you could possibly getting rid of somebody that could be really good at the job just because you get a good vibe from them and you're not getting the same vibe from somebody else. So standardizing your sort of rubrics, do they match up to the particular skill set you're looking for in this job? Do they, you know, will they be able to learn efficiently if you have new projects that come up every so often? Things like that. So just be really fair and fairly quantitative at your rubrics. This is a Slate article I found, and it's talking about Amazon that was recently trying to use AI to predict which resumes would be the best candidates for a job. And turns out that almost immediately, if it could detect they were a woman, they were not a good candidate at all. And even if you couldn't tell from the name, you could maybe tell from like if they did women's volleyball in school or things like that, it would instantly just like cut them out. Basic tech skills such as writing code were even turned down, which is kind of interesting. But macho words like executed and captured were almost always like favored. And it turned out to just be like super incredibly biased and really not a good way to hire people. And there are studies that show people tend to be really biased towards people like them. So if you can kind of look at somebody and say like, you know, I see a lot of me in them, then you're more likely to want to hire that person, which also kind of goes back to needing like really good standards for what you're looking for. And I know we like to think we're sometimes not biased, but let's admit it, we're all human. It kind of happens. So think this through and establish it before you start interviewing. I think this is also a really important point. Get your whole team involved in the interviewing process. Some of the best interviews I've had have actually been where I've talked to real people I would be working with in the end. So my actual manager or actual team members. At one of my interviews at New Relic, I flew out to Portland and I had chats with not just my manager, but literally the whole team. I pair programmed with a couple of the developers, had chats with some of the other people, and we all ended up going out to lunch together, which was really a good feel for not just if I would fit in with them, but if, you know, they would sort of let me, or if I, you know, kind of both ways it worked out. When I interviewed at Square, I had talked to the actual manager very early on, and then did a bunch of programming challenges with different people, but I ended up meeting a good chunk of the team while I was there, and ended up in the end talking to the manager before I finally didn't end up getting the position. But it was still good to kind of get that wraparound that I talked to them in the beginning and at the end. Yeah.
Can I say that? I would suggest if you're going to do that, to have a chat with your team and kind of give, like if you have people on your team that have never interviewed someone else before, to coach them on how to go into interviewing someone else. I've done that, and I had someone ask an inappropriate question to a candidate, and I had to stop it and kind of restart the interview. So it's a good suggestion. I do it. I just don't just bring people in and assume people are going to know what they should and shouldn't say to somebody in an interview, because that can be dicey.
I had a CTO ask me if my wife is planning on getting pregnant.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
That's a big
So if it would affect
I
my
don't
on
remember
call
exactly
duties.
what the question was. It just, I
Yeah.
That's a first.
Yeah.
Very
So-
charming. You need a little talk.
Yeah. So yeah, like she said, maybe kind of coach your team members before they go in. And I'm not saying they have to be there for the whole process, but at some point before I get hired somewhere, I would like to meet the team and kind of get a feel for how I'd fit in there. And they probably want to get a feel for me too. I think if just some manager somewhere randomly talks to me and they're like, oh, you're a good fit, we're going to hire you, and then get thrown randomly somewhere, that's not a good thing. And that's kind of what was probably going to happen when I interviewed at Google. I don't think I talked to a single person I would end up working with. And usually my worst interviews were just plain coding exercises that had nothing to do with the job, and like I said, would never have any involvement later. So if you're not doing this, I would really start pushing for it. And then look for diversity. I know we've probably heard a lot of rants about diversity is kind of terrible in the tech industry, and I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of depth into that, but I do want to make a couple good points. The first one that shows studies of teams that are diverse usually make better products. And this has kind of been proven a couple different times. And then I've also been on meetings where when I was more of a junior developer and everybody else in the room was a senior, I had come up with some really good solutions to problems. And ones that they had not even considered, just because they were sort of solid in their ideas of this is how it works really well. You know, they just never considered that. So diversity ends up help bring new ideas to the table. And different diversity traits you might want to consider, age, gender, ethnicity, different experience levels from juniors to seniors, breadth of experience, so either somebody that's really, really good expert on something or somebody more generalist that can work on a variety of things, and people have different backgrounds. Because people that grew up with different financial backgrounds, people that grew up in different locations, they all have different experiences they can bring to the table as well. And I realize you can't like fit a perfect diverse thing if you have like a small 4 or 5 person team, but you can at least try to vary it up a little bit. The team I'm on now, they hired me and somebody else at the same time. I had more of the really wide breadth of experience. I'd worked on a variety of different projects in a variety of different languages, and that turned out really well because they needed kind of somebody to do a little bit of glue, if you will, to patch a lot of different pieces together. And the other person they hired had a lot of, you know, system design experience and some DevOps things. So he ended up being really a good add to the team too. So this ended up helping diversify the team a lot. So if you can know what things your team lacks, these can help definitely be things to look for. And I'm not saying like you have all guys on the team, there's the woman, you need to hire the woman. But at least say if you have 2 equally good candidates, like maybe pick the more diverse one that would add some new flavor to the team. I did kind of mention maybe consider juniors, but definitely consider interns too. I've seen several companies that are just like, we really only want super experienced people. We want people with 20 years experience, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I get that. Sometimes projects really do benefit from that kind of thing. But there's a lot of benefits to bringing on juniors and other people with things. So a small little sidetrack. They do have some benefits to them. They grow in their own experience if you bring them on a team. And they usually are really excited to get into the job force. I don't know if you remember your first job in the industry, but you probably were like a little bit excited to get into it. They have a lot of energy, and you can definitely put that to use on a team, especially if you have like a few things that nobody's really been super excited to work on. Maybe give them one of those because they might be more excited to work on them. They also get to discover their interests. One of the things I think when you go into the tech industry is you want to work on tech things, but you don't exactly know like what field or anything. It helps them figure that out too. And then some more benefits. They build good relationships with experienced people. I found after my internships, besides knowing like a lot of people in the field, it really helped me see good things to look for when I was going for my next job. And I knew what good productive teams look like because I had really good internships. So I think that helps with them too. And plus networking is always a good benefit. More people on the LinkedIn, if you will. They're also cheaper and easier to hire. I feel it's kind of like sort of bad to say sometimes, but it's kind of true. If you really need more people on your team, but you don't have a ton of money to hire a super senior, they're sometimes good to kind of do a little bit of a trade-off. And they're usually eager to get involved in the workplace and the community. I know a lot of companies really like getting out there into the community and doing different kinds of activities. At my internship, one of the other people ended up in the hospital, and we did like a big fundraising campaign throughout the whole company and got a bunch of money to help them out. So it was really cool to see just kind of all the interns step up and do some good work like that. I found this in the course of some of my research. Oh, you're a tough crowd. Okay.
I laughed.
I'm doing it, me in my head.
All right. So quick benefits for the team if you were to hire on a junior and intern. Time away from regular work. How many of you are usually stuck on a project and it's really hard to kind of get away? They kind of prove to be a good break. If you need to get away every so often, kind of help them out with problems, help them kind of guide them in whatever they're working on. It turns out to be a good break, and I know sometimes I end up being more productive later on when I take good breaks. So this is a good thing. Reevaluating how the team does things. Every so often, if you can stop and say, hey, this is how we're doing something, you intern, do you have any thoughts on our process? Does everything make sense? Is there anything you might do differently? It would help you kind of think through things you've been doing for a while and maybe not thought through if there's better ways to do it, or maybe the flow could be a little different. And then more time spent in the beginning saves more time down the road. I think we had this thought of we don't really want to help out people. You know, we're stuck on a project, we need to get it done as soon as possible. But if you can spend more time with them in the beginning, then you end up saving more time down the road. If they know what they're doing, if they know all the processes, things like that. It seems a little counterintuitive, but it really does save more time. All right.
I'll just say
Yeah.
one good thing about having just new people in general, whether they're interns or not, is on a team. It's a real benefit to have them actually document processes. As soon as they do that, you have the first step onto automating processes.
Yeah.
So it's a big valuable step for them. And of course, they then, by doing that, they learn how your stuff works.
And documenting is definitely important. I've also seen, you know, like really good documentation in the beginning and then just slowly trails off longer time goes on. So yeah, if you can bring in more people and say like, what do you see in our process? Can you write it down? Yeah, it kind of helps out. And then kind of the last slide on this, they get to see new ideas and technologies, or they have seen those too. I know when I was in school, I'd seen a lot of different technologies, but once I got into the field, they were pretty solid on, oh, we do this because that's kind of what we've always used. It really did help to kind of show, hey, you know, I've seen some open source projects that can maybe simplify this, things like that. So it ended up benefiting some of the teams I was on right after school. It helps break out of the orthogeny, doing the same thing over and over and over, getting somebody else to say like, you know, hey, what if we did this instead? Investing in the future of your team. So it seems kind of weird that you might hire somebody for 3 months and then, you know, they're done. But really, you might be hiring a future employee. If they already know what it's like to work at your company and they like it, then, you know, they're really easy to bring back later. So interns really help out with that. And helps you get more side work done. My first internship, they were trying to get DoD certified like as soon as possible. And they said, we're stuck kind of working on these things to implement this as fast as possible, but we're stuck also on testing. And it's taking our QA person a really long time to do things. If you could build like an automated framework that would help with some of the testing, this would get done faster. So I ended up building this whole framework that allowed them to kind of take their new features, push it through my system, and ended up helping the QA person spend about 50% less time on every new thing they had to develop. So it ended up saving the whole team drastic amounts of time. Okay, so wrapping it up, ask the new team what they feel is missing, advertise the role correctly, have standard and fair rubrics for comparing your candidates, get the whole team involved in the interviewing process, ask the right questions, look for diversity in your candidates, and consider juniors or interns. Yeah.
The one about the rubrics for comparing.
Mm-hmm.
I was always wondering, like, when you were saying a junior or senior or whatever, and you also see in you know, job listings, they'll say 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, whatever. Is there any general guideline that you know of or that's out there that says that, you know, what's the definition of junior or senior, or what, you know, like, because that's a kind of nebulous term. You say junior, well, what do you mean, you know, that I've done it for 3 months and now if I go past that? I never knew what that, you know, if there was anything that was a general rule.
That's a really good question, and the best answer I have is there's absolutely no rule whatsoever. I heard a really good description once in that a junior knows how to program but may not know how to find the solution to what they're working on really quickly. Like they'll have to do a bunch of research to kind of find it. Mid-level kind of knows they can get a task and solve it, but it might take a little bit of work. And then like a senior can kind of look at a really high level and say like, I know how to design a whole system to solve a problem. It's still kind of a super vague thing. I've had friends that like 2 years out of school, they're already like senior developers, and I've had people that have been stuck in a junior title for a really long time, even though they're not juniors. It's really kind of a odd thing in our industry that we're so revolvent around these titles and that you need X number of years when in reality there's almost no good reason for it sometimes.
It's far less the amount of work that you're doing and what you're responsible for. Like if you're responsible for other people, that to me is either a senior engineer or a staff engineer, and your labels and the way that your kind of structure works within teams or within an organization can be drastically different from anyone else. So there's no like governing body or like classification system or certification system. So it's more about just kind of getting roles and responsibilities and figuring out, you know, so it's like, I look at like titles like that as, especially when hiring, it's less about what the title is and more what the roles and responsibilities are.
That's, I mean, my argument.
If you're interested afterwards, come find me. I have a document that I actually did that like kind of listed out what we expected of the different levels, if that's of interest to you.
Because I mean, we're actually going through this process right now, and so we listed all the responsibilities, but they, you know, the team feels the need to list out, you know, junior, whatever. I said, well, you know, but if you put, then the argument was, we'll put number of years. And I said, but you know, like you just said, you know, years and the definition of junior, senior, whatever, are not necessarily one and the same. I mean, you probably could make somewhat of a generalization that, you know, that less years are more junior, more years are probably more senior. That would be a generalization, but that's not always the case, you know. And it depends on what.
I've done the same thing where I'm, you know, I'm trying to find, because to me it's even harder because it's like I have to like sort of areas that like, you know, how can they communicate? Like a junior is going to be able to communicate with other developers, probably okay, but they're probably going to have a hard time translating their thoughts and ideas to a business person, right? Like, whereas a senior is probably going to have a better able to tailor their communications to the thing. And then like on each area, like any particular person might not always be on the high end, but like a senior person will be mostly on the high end of the different areas. And there are a lot of places that have published theirs. Like here's a junior, here's a senior, and think through math. Their Withee that they use when they were in business is still up. And their CTO is posting a lot of articles about stuff, their former CTO. But
Which group did you think?
there was a company in town called Think Through Math. They're no longer, but their stuff is still public, and a bunch of other companies, bigger names, have published their levels for their basic job descriptions. So I've been looking at a lot of them. But like, there's one article particularly like that talks about like, you know, their version of a senior is expected to mentor and be an example. They're expected to be good communicators and have, you know, a technical depth. And that like having two of those might make you something else, but you're not like probably more senior. So like, I have a huge like, you know, trade stuff with other people. So get in the room and code and supply, and we'll trade stuff.
I'll send it out, the document I had out in the engineering management Slack room for code supply.
One thing I was going to add in is, you know, I've had companies in interviews ask me, how many years of experience do you think you have? And it always becomes a weird question because I learned the program when I was in like first grade. So by that logic, I have, you know, 25 years plus experience programming. But, you know, if they want solely based on you've done some business project and it's gone to deployment, that's a lot fewer. And especially since I've worked on a lot of internal projects, so there's also been very few real world out there in the world, people have used my product kind of a thing. It's just kind of a weird balance. So I give them kind of an approximation number that says I feel like I have the equivalent of this many years of like professional experience, but it's never really a thing I don't like mentioning because I don't feel like it shows my skill set very well. Like just purely, I have X number of years of experience.
I think you should use the first grade one though if you're gonna work for the government. Because they use, whenever you first, the number of years equals your
Number
salary.
of years? 25 years, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of weird.
Yep.
Which is why I like the idea of not necessarily advertising.
Here's a movie.
Yeah. Which is why I like the idea of not advertising we need X number of years experience, but saying we need somebody who, you know, has done a couple projects. We need somebody who's been able to communicate with the client and, you know, deliver, you know, figure out the requirements and expectations and things like that. You know, be more specific in your job description of this is what we need out of this person and look for those. All right, so this is kind of the summary on what I think we can use to kind of get the process started on building a new team. And so with this, I think we can now enter to the next phase of our process, onboarding. So you've hired somebody, great. Now what? We need to bring them on board. We need to let them have their first day, first week, all that good stuff. This can be usually pretty good or pretty bad. Most of my experiences show it's rather meh. It's usually some combination of good or bad from what I've seen. Rarely is a process good though. So what can we do about it? Welcome to the new employee orientation.
Ha.
One left, good. All right. So first, we can kind of prep for them ahead of time. You know they're coming. You told them you were going to hire them. So what can we do? We can make sure our computer is mostly ready. Have you ever went into a job, they've given you a computer, and one, it's not set up, or two, you can't log in? I see some nods, yes. I've had that myself. I feel like logging in is like the bare minimum. Like if I can't log into my computer, my day is shot, you know. So you can at least make sure when you're bringing in a new person, they can log into their computer.
Or have a computer.
If it needs software, make sure you have all the keys gathered together. It'd be great if they were.
A friend of mine just spent a week with a computer.
A programmer. Wow.
Sorry.
Go back to
I just didn't hear what was going on.
No, I said a friend of mine went a week on her first job, like her first week of the job without a computer.
Nice.
Yeah.
No computer, even
No
better.
computer.
Yeah. So saying if it needs software, at least have it. It would be ideal if they were already installed. If not, at least get all the like keys ready and maybe have like a page that says go install these 10 things in order. And then also another idea I've seen on a couple companies is have like a GitHub repo that they just download a script, run the script, and it will go download everything and install it for them. That's pretty handy. Like I said, login should be tested already if possible. I hate having to call tech support on my very first day, but I have done it. It is really kind of terrible. Hi, go back. So why not set a good impression? Kind of have that already done. Have a desk ready and clean for them. And I say ready and clean because I have been to desks that have not been ready for me. And I've also been to desks that have not been clean. One job I had like huge amount of dust on it, and finally I like cleaned that off. And then I opened up like the cabinet on the cubicle, and they had a can of coffee, I think from 4 years ago. It was like expired by several years. The coffee maker that was like dirty and gross inside. It had some like Tupperware containers that had some leftover food. It was just absolutely disgusting. So, you know, have that ready. And besides being easy and convenient, it really makes them feel welcome. It makes them feel included. Makes them feel like, hey, you all thought about me as you were hiring me. Get together as a team the first day or two. And I don't mean like get together to work. I mean like play a card game or go to lunch or just talk about like what your backgrounds are and where you came from, how you kind of ended up in the jobs that you've ended up. Go get ice cream. I had a team that took me out for ice cream once my first week. That was kind of nice. It really builds a good vibe with the team. And if you care enough to spend time learning about the new person, it helps release their stress, but also provides kind of more of a safer feeling. You ever go into a workplace where you don't really feel safe to ask questions or deal with your teammates? It's not a good place. It helps make them feel less like that token new person. The last time I gave this talk, somebody had mentioned that for like the entire time they were an intern, nobody learned their name. So it's just like the intern. We need the intern to go do something. It's kind of terrible. And how many of you hate being the new person on your job? Like, yeah, lots of nuts. Helps build that safe feeling. Provide a mentor who will willingly answer questions. And I say willingly because I've had people just like ask Joe questions and then Joe never wants to answer questions. I think this is huge because, you know, when you, like, who wants to mentor the new person? Anyone? It doesn't really build a good vibe that you want to have.
It's like it's like gym class in high school, like getting picked
Yeah.
last for, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh.
Nobody wants to get picked last for gym class. And
At my company, we assign every new person a Sherpa who will help guide them through
Sherpa.
their onboarding experience, whether it's getting help with their laptop not working or answering any
That's-
questions.
that's kind of nice. Yeah.
Is that like round robin? How does that get assigned?
Well, it's a small company, so there's not many people to pick from. Like my team's the biggest dev team, so I might pick based on who said they want to build their mentoring skills. Or I might, you know, if there's a natural fit or whoever volunteers.
Yeah.
For everybody else, there's usually maybe one other person that might be.
I just wanted to second the idea of having the automation for the previous slide, but
yeah.
Second the idea of having automation to set up the workstations, but also like I was at one point in my life I was a desktop systems administrator and I gave my new employees like a choice of 5, like basic standard types of systems that they could choose from.
Oh, nice.
And then, you know, they walked in the door with a feeling like, oh no, I'm not gonna have, instead of having, I'm just gonna have a lockdown laptop that I'm not familiar with and not comfortable with, I actually have some choice and they're considering me when I arrive.
Yeah. I like that.
But that takes thought ahead of time.
Yeah. Most of this entire talk is based around like, hey, think about this ahead of time. But I was also going to say this mentor should be fairly easily available. They should be at least like somewhere in the proximity of the new person. And I'm not saying they have to be like instantaneously available at all moments, because I know sometimes you get in the zone and you don't really want to be interrupted. But it should be a way for somebody that just needs to, they forgot how to do something on your code repository, or you know they forgot I need to fill out this form and turn in the HR, where do I go? Just somebody that can easily answer those types of questions. Pair with them in the beginning. So there's no better way to figure out how the team works than to just let them see how the team works. And especially if you can drag them in on the process too, I think it helps a lot. If you're already a pairing team, maybe just spend some extra time with them in the beginning. So don't necessarily like force them to program as much, maybe just let them see maybe like how 2 people pair, and then maybe they could kind of chime in as they see, so maybe like a 3-person pair, if you will. You can maybe even pair on non-code related things, if you have different meetings, you're trying to design things, things like that, or maybe just say like, hey, I need to turn in this thing to HR, do you want to come with me so you know where the office is, things like that. So I also gave this at a conference where they were really, really big on mob programming, which is kind of just like 8 people programming around the computer at the same time. So if you're a mobbing team...
Around one computer?
Yeah, around one computer. It's a weird system. It kind of works for some people, so I'm like, all right. Maybe don't like force them to be on the mobbing process in the beginning, just kind of let them watch and sort of get experience, feel for how everything works, and then, you know, kind of when they're ready, kind of jump in. Check in with your new person at least once a week. And I'm not just saying like, how's it going? Good. see you later, kind of a thing. But actually check in. How are you doing? Are things making sense? What can I explain better? Are there things I can provide to, help you understand things better? How many of you have been asked that good old question, do you have any questions? And always the answer is no, because you almost never know what questions to ask if you're being asked if you have any questions.
The question sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, it's kind of a challenge. And especially in the beginning, you're usually overwhelmed, so you just don't know how to answer that kind of thing. So check in with them and, definitely ask them really specific questions that don't require them to tell you what's wrong, but try to prod to find out. So things like, how are you doing is more, directed at them. Are things making sense is directed at them, not expecting them to, tell you what you need to know. And especially in the beginning, there's a lot to absorb in a new job. I've been in like 8-hour HR meetings in new jobs before. It's just so much information. This really helps out in the beginning. And ideally, more than one team member can do this too. So maybe just say like, hey, you check with them on Monday, you check with them on Wednesday, you check with them on Friday. Something like that. So like kind of everybody can get a good feel, but not any one person is expected to spend a ton of time. Okay, so I think a great onboarding experience can kind of be summarized with these points. You can prep for them ahead of time, make sure the computers and desktop spaces are all ready for them. Get together as a team the first day or two, both for working and for non-working. Provide a mentor who will willingly answer questions. Pair with them in the beginning, and then check in with them at least once a week. All right, so cool. Now you have this new person, they're set up more to succeed, and your team is ready to benefit from having a new person and have their involvement. So what do we need to do now? I think we need to have effective mentoring. So I want to talk a little bit about what does this mean and how we can do this. And in the beginning, I wasn't going to include this section, but after talking to a lot of managers I knew, several of them had said like, oh my gosh, please include this because I don't have the foggiest idea how to mentor people. So I kind of figured it was important if I had people begging me to do this. Let's see. So there's 3 main things I think you need to know. We're going to dive right in. The first thing is you need a good process for mentoring. I think mentoring feels like 2 people sitting at a table and magic happens. I think that's kind of how we portray it. This isn't really the case. It takes a lot of thought and diligence. So I think a good process really involves a few different things. The good onboarding, we kind of talked about that already. Consistent and fair standards. So if you bring in, let's say, a new person and they've been working in the job for a while, you might expect them to be like really, really good off the bat. And they may not necessarily be like that because they might be really good at what they've worked on in the past. They don't know kind of how your software works yet. They don't know how your process, your flow, everything's a little bit different from company to company. So it might be good to say like, we're going to treat you like one of the other team members. We don't expect magic from you in the beginning though. So consistent in that you treat them just like all the other team members and not like somebody special or different, but fair in that you don't have those super high expectations up front. Not relying on them to know what they need to know. So we kind of mentioned that, do you have any questions usually is not the right question to ask at all. So it's 100% fine for somebody to not know what's going on at the moment, just because there's so much in that beginning. So it's fine for them not to know what to ask. Leaving opportunity to discover. So I word it like this because, we're talking about like maybe letting them pair in the beginning. Maybe give them some opportunities to not do it correctly. And then say like, okay, how do you think we might recover from this? Kind of give them some kind of ways to say like, okay, maybe do we do this, do we do that? Just give them some ways to kind of discover on their own, more than just like you giving them information and all the answers. And then also give them some time to play with the software too. I've been given a lot of software products to be like, here, go fix bugs now. And I don't know how to use the software to go fix bugs. So, maybe either give them a good demonstration on how to work through it, let them play with it, or let them see how other people are using it. If it's internal, go take them down to the team that uses it and say, watch them, see how they're interacting, things like that. So the second thing, you need good communication. How many people have heard that communication is kind of your key to success? Good teams are based on good communication, things like that. Kind of the same thing here. So what does this look like? It means good one-on-one meetings early and often. So don't wait a month or two to get these started. Start them early. On my current job, day one, I had a one-on-one meeting. I didn't have much input, but the fact we got this ball rolling very early on was really important. Ask good questions like, how's it going? What are you learning? What's going well right now? What's not going well right now? And what can I or the team do to help you be better? It really also focuses on them, but asks them, gets them kind of telling you how the whole process is going. Reiterate that learning company procedures takes time. Like we said, going in, you get a whole flood of information, you're going to remember a small portion of that. And sometimes I just feel like I struggle very awkwardly in the beginning, trying to remember everything and clearly messing up a lot of things in the beginning. This is fine. Reiterate that, this is an important part of the process. And sometimes those things you learn in orientation don't always play out exactly the same way that they're told. I know sometimes I'm told you have to do things by the book in these 5 ways, and nobody ever does that. So sometimes that just takes a little while too. Check on confused looks. So, if you does all this make sense? Like, that confused look probably means no, it does not make sense. So if you see them sitting at their desk and they just look really puzzled, ask them hey, what's wrong? Something not making sense. Can we re-explain what you need to do? Things like that. And then my final point for mentoring, you need good guidance and visioning. Mentoring really is kind of about guidance, right? You want to help them learn what they need to do to be better and succeed. So how can we do this? Make sure that they have a project that's doable. My last job, I worked there for about 6 months before I had a project. It was kind of weird. And then when they gave me a project, I didn't have the foggiest idea how it worked or what it did. It really just wasn't a good fit. And you may not always be able to get started on this project on day one, but that project should be there. You should know you have a place already when you get there. Pairing, like I said before, letting them see how things work and getting a feel for the actual day-to-day experience is really important. Guidance on how to solve problems. So talk with them on how to solve these problems. Solving a problem, you may know how to do it in the tech industry, but it might be slightly different with your particular client base or the product you're using, things like that. And then my last job also did this, where they'd give me a task, I would work on it given all the tech knowledge I knew, but what I didn't know was they maybe had some libraries or things that already did this, and I was supposed to just drop them in and make it work. So I wasn't really explained very well on their software and how to incorporate what they had already done into it. Get juniors' advice. I kind of mentioned this a little bit before, that sometimes it helps to let the less experienced people in on larger design decisions. Sometimes you'd be kind of just amazed at maybe you're architecting this really big thing and they just have a totally different way of thinking about it, and it just might be more efficient. One of the things I ended up solving was they were trying to build a system that would check a database every 10 seconds to see if something a new file had landed in the system. But I was just why don't you just set up a file watcher on a folder so that your operating system tells you when a new file comes in. And they had never even thought of this for some reason, which also means you're not pinging a database somewhere every 10 seconds. And ensure your new people actually understand the processes. It's one thing to hear your list of 10 things and, it makes sense in the beginning, but when you go to sit down, you remember 2 of those and like 2 of them don't make sense and don't really work. So a couple ways you can do this: either have them re-explain the thing back to you, and then you can see what kind of they don't understand, or have them write it down and just make sure, they're going into what they're doing correctly. So mentoring really boils down to these 3 things. I think if you can focus on these and kind of keep them in mind as you're working with your new people, it will help them benefit, but I think also help them integrate into the team faster, which then helps you kind of save time, and everybody sort of benefits from this. All right, mentoring is great. Pass it on. That's cute, right? Okay. Okay. So now you've hired somebody, you've onboarded them, you taught them a lot of the ropes around your company, and they should hopefully be supported because they have mentoring. So all of this is great. There's one more thing we need to do, and that's iterate and improve your process. We're developers, probably most of us work in some sort of agile process, but if we're doing all this work to bring in somebody and we're not improving our own process in the process, it's really not helping future people we want to hire, and in turn is kind of not helping our team evolve in the future too. So before you even start hiring, start planning out your sprint. And I put sprint in quotation marks because we usually have sprints defined as like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. But you may not know how long this process is going to take. So I'm calling a sprint kind of typically like we're going to start hiring somebody to maybe like 3 to 6 months in once they've been hired. This may vary depending on what your team kind of works with, but this kind of is probably a good idea to start out with. I would recommend documenting what you plan to do, and then so that's kind of like the first part of the talk. And if you end up hiring often, maybe your sprint might be like 3 people come into our department at a time. So it just kind of varies based on your company and your size and how often you hire. Hold a retrospective on your hiring process about 3 to 6 months into it, or after you've hired them, about 3 to 6 months into it, and include the new team member too. So this will tell you all the usual things retrospectives are good for. So what worked well, what didn't go well, what to keep doing, what not to keep doing, which would be great for both the team and for the new person, because as the team, you'll probably see what happened if it was a rough process. You put out a job or description and it took a really long time to find somebody. Maybe your description wasn't good, maybe you weren't publishing this out to the right places to find people, things like that. Or if it was just a really rough process, maybe you can improve the interview system that's going on. And then include the new person because they were the ones that went through this whole experience. If they can tell you, hey, I did a whole bunch of interviewing and absolutely none of that meant anything when I actually got onto the job. Or maybe they could say, things went great, but the onboarding was really terrible. The steps I needed to install all the software was wrong. They can help pinpoint parts of your process and you can improve them for the next time. Document this because likely you're not hiring a ton of people very often, and so your sprints might not be so regular like you would with a software project. They might be like you don't hire somebody for another couple years. So document this so you remember what worked and what didn't, but also so you can kind of revise your process the next time. And it might also be helpful for other teams if they're going to start hiring and like, hey, that group did really well the last time. What can we learn from them? They could read your retrospective as well. This could also help if you have a really complicated hiring process. If you hire a bunch of people, then everybody who's involved in the hiring could read this and know kind of what they need to do in their process. Improve for your next sprint. Every set of interviews can always be better. Every onboarding experience can always be a little better. And every mentoring experience can always be a little better. So think about what you went through with all this. Write it down. Just kind of make it better for everybody, your future teammates and your current team when they go do hiring. Okay. So every like 3 to 4 weeks on a software project, you probably do stuff like this anyway. So just apply it to your hiring process as well. So before you start, kind of plan out how you're going to go into your sprint. Hold the retrospective 3 to 6 months in after you've hired somebody. Document it and use that to improve your new sprint. All right. As my friend Allison likes to say, teamwork makes the dream work. Anyway, all right. So I want to wrap this up. We've been talking for a while. So I think building your team to last really means kind of a few major things. Definitely choosing good team members, having a good onboarding experience, having effective mentoring, and then iterating and improving on your process. These things will not only help build up your team, but I think build it to last. Make your team good, productive, and the new people will benefit immensely from this. Your team will grow and be better in the process. And hopefully your company as a whole can improve if all of your teams are doing this kind of thing as well. So there's a lot of stuff. I went over all this, but you know what? You got this. All right. So my name is Sarah Withee. I'm Geeky Girl Sarah on all the social media things. I'm happy to chat with you afterward. You're welcome to reach out, email me, or tweet at me or whatever if you have questions or thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear if you started implementing any of this in your company, how that worked out for you, either for good or for worse. I would love to take feedback and improve my own talk as well. But also just like to hear good stories about things going better. So if you have those, feel free to share. Go, be awesome. Thank you for coming. And have a good night.
Thank you.